It was the kind of evening that normally wouldn't have stood out. Midweek, early fall. The air had that crisp bite to it. Not cold yet, but enough to make you wish you'd grabbed a jacket. I remember I was holding a takeout bag in one hand and fumbling with my keys in the other, thinking about nothing more than dinner and catching the last quarter of the game. Until I saw it. Lying there, plain as day, right in the middle of the doormat outside our front door. A man's tie. That small detail froze me. I stopped mid-step, blinking like maybe I was seeing it wrong. I looked around the porch, then back at the tie. It wasn't mine. That I knew with certainty. I own 5 ties, maybe 6. 2 for work events I hate attending, 1 for weddings, 1 for funerals, 1 Jessica bought me that I wore exactly once, and a blue one I always reach for when I want to look like I care. None of them looked like this. This one was different. Sleek, silk, clearly expensive. Blue with gold diagonal stripes, bold, but tasteful. It looked freshly pressed, like it had barely been worn. But there it was, abandoned outside our front door, like someone had yanked it off in a rush and forgotten it entirely. A strange feeling stirred in my gut. Not quite panic. Not even suspicion, not yet. Just off. I bent down slowly, like it might vanish if I moved too quickly. I picked it up, feeling the fabric slide through my fingers. Smooth, slightly warm from the sunlight. I turned it over, half expecting to find a label or initials, something that might explain what it was doing here. But there was nothing. Just a high-end designer tag I didn't recognize. That somehow made it worse. I stood there for a long second, staring at the tie like it might explain itself. And then I looked at the door. Locked. As always. Nothing else looked disturbed. But I couldn't shake the image that was forming in my mind, of someone else standing on that porch while I wasn't home. Someone male. Well-dressed. Clothes enough to drop something like this and not even notice. I brought it inside with me, tossed it onto the hallway table and stared at it while I put away the takeout. Tried to distract myself with the TV. Watched the game on mute. I couldn't tell you who won. I barely registered the plays. I must have picked up that tie and examined it 5 or 6 more times before she came home. Jessica walked in like nothing was out of the ordinary. Her hair was up, damp with sweat. She wore black leggings, one of those cropped athletic tops, and she had a half-empty smoothie in one hand. She looked flushed, glowing, like she just crushed a spin class or jogged through half the city. Her gym bag was slung over one shoulder, earbuds still tangled in her hand. And when she saw me standing there with the tie in my hand, her expression didn't even falter. Not for more than a split second. "Oh, that's Mike's," she said, grinning. She dropped her bag by the wall and stepped out of her sneakers without missing a beat. "He stopped by earlier, dropped off some work docs I forgot. He was on his way back from the gym and wanted to make it quick. I guess he must have changed out front and accidentally left that behind." She smiled again, like it was funny, like this random man changing clothes on our front porch and losing a designer tie was something out of a sitcom. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But it didn't sit right. Not just the story. Her tone. The casualness. The timing. The fact that she offered the explanation so fast. So easily. Without a single question like, "Oh, where did you find that?" Or, "Wait, what tie?" Almost like she'd rehearsed it. I managed a nod. "Mike from your office?" I asked just to see her reaction. "Yeah," she said, heading toward the kitchen. "You've met him before, remember? Tall, wears those weird brown shoes, always talks about crypto." I remembered, vaguely. Jessica worked in project management at a mid-sized firm, and Mike had come to a company barbecue at our house the previous summer. He was polite enough, though something about him rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was how he lingered around Jessica too long when they talked, or the way he seemed to know personal details she hadn't told me she'd shared. But that was a year ago. He changed on the porch? I asked, following her. Yeah, I told him he could clean up a bit. He had sweat all over his shirt. Said he was heading to a dinner meeting after. She opened the fridge. Rummaging like this was all perfectly normal. "Why? What's up?" I held up the tie. "It was on the doormat," I said. She paused, just for a second, then gave a small shrug. "Weird. I guess he dropped it when he was grabbing his bag." It's just a tie, babe. Just a tie. She took a sip of her smoothie and smiled like she was waiting for me to let it go. And I almost did. Almost. But I couldn't stop hearing the way she'd said, "It's just a tie." Like it wasn't a big deal. Like it wasn't a sign. I didn't press her. I didn't ask why Mike had to stop by our house after hours. I didn't ask why he didn't just leave the documents at the office, or drop them off with the front desk, or send them digitally like literally everyone else. I didn't ask why he felt comfortable enough to change clothes at our place, or why she suddenly seemed perfectly fine with another man using our front door like his personal locker room. I just nodded, said, "Okay," ate dinner in silence. But my mind wouldn't shut off. The image kept coming back to me. Some guy standing on our porch, stripping off a sweaty shirt, laughing with her, maybe brushing past her as he stepped inside. My house, our house, the place I thought of as safe as ours, invaded, and worse than that, sanitized, explained away with a neat little story. That night I couldn't sleep. Jessica passed out beside me in bed like nothing had happened, her breathing steady and peaceful. But I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. I couldn't prove anything. Nothing was technically wrong. But something had shifted. In her. In us. In me. It's like when you walk into a room and something's been moved. Just a little. Barely noticeable. A picture frame tilted. A lamp unplugged. You wouldn't notice unless you really knew the space. But when you do, you feel it in your bones. That's what the tie was. It wasn't just a silk accessory left behind by some forgetful coworker. It was the picture frame out of place. It was the quiet alarm bell ringing at the back of my mind. It was the first sign that someone else had stepped into my home, and that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only man who had a key. Started small, like most things do. Just a flicker of doubt I tried to ignore. After the tie incident, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. One weird moment didn't mean anything. I gave Jessica the benefit of the doubt, told myself I was being paranoid. I reminded myself that we'd been through rough patches before and always worked through them. But still, something had shifted. And once that crack formed, I couldn't unsee it. I found myself watching her more closely, not out of obsession, but out of this gnawing, quiet fear that refused to go away. At first, it was subtle. Her schedule started to shift. Jessica had always been a hard worker, don't get me wrong. She'd stay late at the office from time to time, especially when they were on deadline. An extra hour here or there wasn't unusual. But now, she was getting home at 10, then 11, sometimes even after midnight. And it wasn't gradual. It was like flipping a switch. One week she was getting home by 6, and the next she was basically living somewhere else half the time. I asked her about it carefully, casually. "Everything all right at work? You've been pulling a lot of late nights lately." She didn't even look up from her phone. "Yeah, we're onboarding a new client. Lots of back and forth. Won't be like this forever." I nodded. "You sure you're not overdoing it?" That got her attention. Her eyes snapped up, just for a second. "You think I don't know my limits?" It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Like a trap I didn't know I'd stepped into. I backed off. "Just checking in." She gave me a quick smile and went back to scrolling. Later that night, I heard her laughing in the guest room, on the phone. The door was cracked open, just enough that I could hear the cadence of her voice. Not the words. Playful. Mate. Her voice dropped to a whisper after a while, and then the door quietly clicked shut. That was new. We never used to close doors in this house unless we were arguing. We never had to. A few days later, I noticed something else. Her phone. It used to live on the kitchen counter or the nightstand, just there, part of the background. But now, she took it everywhere. Bathroom, laundry room, backyard, didn't matter. She kept it on her at all times, like a lifeline. One night, she even took it into the shower with her. When she came out, it was wrapped in a hand towel like it was some fragile artifact. When I asked her why, she laughed. "It's waterproof, babe. Don't worry." I didn't say what I was thinking. Since when did you care about taking calls in the shower? And it wasn't just where the phone went, it was how it behaved. Notifications that used to ping out loud now vibrated silently. Her lock screen no longer showed previews. and she started tilting the screen away from me whenever we sat next to each other, even if we were just watching a movie. Again, nothing solid. Nothing I could point to and say, there, that's the proof. But it all built up in layers, like sediment settling at the bottom of a lake. Eventually, you look down and realize you're standing in quicksand. Then there was the cologne. It was a Friday night. She'd come home late, again, and leaned in to kiss me hello. But this time, instead of her usual perfume, I smelled something different. Sharper, muskier, masculine. I pulled back just a little, caught off guard. New scent. She blinked. What? Your perfume. It smells different. She hesitated, just for a beat too long. Oh, I think I walked through someone's cologne cloud in the elevator. You know how it is. She waved a hand like she could dismiss it from the air. That might have worked once. But my memory's not great, and even I knew that wasn't the smell of an elevator. That scent lingered. It clung to the collar of her jacket, stayed in the car when she dropped her purse in and left the door open. It wasn't a trace, it was a presence. I didn't press her, just nodded. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop imagining the moment. Her close enough to someone that his cologne transferred to her clothes. What kind of work dinner ended like that? Then came the weekend changes. Jessica used to live for lazy Saturdays. Sweatpants, Netflix, brunch in the kitchen. That was our ritual. But all of a sudden, she had plans. Every weekend. Brunch with Maya, coffee with Alina, trips to the farmer's market or yoga or this new spa place downtown. Every time it was a different friend. But I never saw any selfies. Never heard her talk about the conversations. When I asked how it went, she'd just say, good, and change the subject. No stories, no laughter. Just silence. One Saturday afternoon, I checked the fridge while she was out, thinking maybe I'd surprise her by cooking dinner, and noticed something strange. None of the groceries she said she'd picked up were there. Not even a receipt on the counter. And Jessica was the queen of saving receipts. I asked her about it later, and she said she must have left the bag in the trunk. The next morning, I checked the car. No groceries. That was the moment I stopped trying to explain things away. No more giving her the benefit of the doubt. The signs were there. I just hadn't wanted to believe them. I started retracing everything. Every conversation, every late night, every shift in her behavior. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Her hair styled in different ways she never wore for me. Her nails suddenly done every week. Her gym clothes more expensive, more curated. Lipstick in her purse that she used to say she hated. Even her playlists changed. Jessica had always been into indie folk and mellow acoustic stuff. But now, I'd hear bass-heavy R&B drifting through the bathroom door. Music I'd never heard her play once in our 7 years together. Felt like she was becoming someone else. Or maybe she already had. One night, I got up to grab water around 2 a.m. and caught a glimpse of her phone screen lighting up on the nightstand. I wasn't trying to snoop, but I saw it. A message preview. From someone named N. That's all it said. Just an initial. And the text? Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about you. My chest tightened. My throat went dry. For a moment, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But the screen faded back to black, and the moment was gone. She didn't stir. She didn't notice I'd seen anything. I just stood there in the hallway, frozen, holding a glass of water I'd already forgotten about. My mind spinning, my stomach churning. N. Who the hell was N? Was that Mike? Did he go by a nickname? Or was this someone else entirely? Someone I didn't even know existed? I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathe beside me, my mind unraveling 1,000 different timelines. And the worst part? I still wanted it not to be true. But deep down, I knew it was. The tie was the first thread that unraveled everything. But this was the moment the knot came loose. It was all there in front of me now, her distance, her excuses, her coldness, her secrecy. The woman lying beside me wasn't my Jessica anymore. Or maybe she never was, and I'd just been too in love, too blind to see it. Something was going on. And soon I was going to find out exactly what. You'd think that when the truth finally shows itself, it comes in some dramatic flash, like lightning in the middle of a storm. But it wasn't like that. Not for me. For me, the truth crept in slowly, step by step, until I found myself standing in front of it, unable to look away. It was a Thursday night, the kind of night where the silence in the house hums just a little too loud. Jessica had another late one at work. She said she was stuck reviewing contracts with the team and that they might go for drinks after to decompress. I didn't say much in response, just nodded and told her to stay safe. But my voice was hollow, because I knew she wasn't going to the office. I knew she wasn't going out for drinks with coworkers. And I knew this was no longer just suspicion. This was me deciding to finally face it. So I waited until she left, gave it 10 minutes, then grabbed my jacket and keys. My heart was pounding, but not from adrenaline. This was something deeper, something colder. The ache you feel when you're about to do something that might change everything. I didn't follow her directly. I'd learned that much. Instead, I drove a few blocks behind, headlights off when I could get away with it. Her car took the turn out of our neighborhood, headed east toward downtown. Not the direction of her office. Not even close. I stayed back, keeping just enough distance to track her without drawing attention. Every turn she took felt like another nail in the coffin. I told myself there was still a chance. Maybe she really was meeting coworkers somewhere different. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the tie, the late nights, the secrecy, the message from N. Maybe all of it was just a tangled web of coincidence. But then she pulled into the parking lot of a roadside motel. Not a bar, not a restaurant, a motel. A place with flickering red neon lights and a sign that said vacancy in peeling letters. The kind of place people go when they want to be forgotten for a few hours. I parked down the block, heart hammering so hard I thought it might explode. For a few minutes I couldn't move. I just sat there, watching her silhouette through the windshield as she adjusted something in the rearview mirror. Then I saw the passenger door open, and that's when the world cracked open. A man got in, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket. His face was turned away from me, but his hand found hers instantly, like it belonged there. Couldn't breathe. They sat there for a moment, talking. She laughed, tilted her head back and laughed, like she hadn't smiled at me like that in months. Then they both got out. He wrapped his arm around her waist as they crossed the lot. Walking casually like this was just normal. Like they'd done this a dozen times before. They didn't even check in. She already had the key. I couldn't see which room they entered, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Everything I needed to know I saw in those few seconds. And yet, I couldn't stop myself from getting closer. I got out of my car and walked the side of the lot, staying in the shadows. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't thinking at all. I just needed to hear it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to break the last illusion that there might be some innocent explanation. That maybe this was just work-related or accidental or something I could wake up from. But the universe doesn't give you that kind of grace. I reached the second floor, creeping up the back stairs, careful not to make a sound. I didn't know what I was looking for until I heard it. Her voice. Laughter again. Through the thin walls. It was muffled, but unmistakable. Playful. Carefree. The kind of laugh you give when you feel comfortable. When you feel wanted. And then his voice. Deep, low, close. I stood there in the hallway, back pressed to the wall, heart in my throat, while the world I had built for 7 years collapsed silently around me. There was no denying it now. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't emotional infidelity or bad boundaries or a marriage going through a rough patch. This was physical. This was int asterisk mate. This was her in bed with another man while I stood outside the door, breath catching in my lungs like fire. I don't know how long I stayed there. Maybe 10 minutes. Maybe more. Eventually, I went back to my car, numb. I sat behind the wheel with my hands gripping the steering wheel like I needed something to tether me to reality. The interior light buzzed when I didn't shut the door all the way, and that stupid, soft buzzing was the only sound besides my breathing. Then I saw it. On the passenger seat of her car. Through the glass. A man's jacket. folded neatly, black leather, and next to it, a receipt, half crumpled, but I could read it from where I stood. 2 cocktails. 1 room. That was all the confirmation I needed. It wasn't just what I saw or what I heard. It was what I felt. The weight of 7 years pressing down on me like a boulder. The years we spent building a life, decorating the house, planning vacations, talking about having kids. It all felt like a movie I'd watched in someone else's life. I was no longer in a marriage. I was in the aftermath. When I got home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things or drink or call anyone. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. There's a kind of pain that doesn't need noise. The quiet kind. The one that sits in your chest and spreads through your bones like frost. I thought about the way she used to laugh at my dumb jokes. I thought about the Sunday mornings we used to make pancakes and play music in the kitchen. I thought about the first time I told her I loved her, and the way she said it back, eyes wide like it had caught her by surprise. And then I thought about her laughing in that motel room. And something in me died. The next morning, I didn't wait for her to come home. I left a note on the kitchen table, written in small, steady letters. I'm leaving. Good luck in your new life. That's all it said. No accusations. No pleading. No drama. Just truth. I packed her things quietly, methodically. I put them in suitcases and set them by the door. Then I carried them out to the landing, one by one, like I was taking out trash that didn't belong in my house anymore. When I was done, I walked to my car and parked it 2 houses down, engine off, watching through the windshield. She arrived 20 minutes later. She looked tired but not guilty. Her hair was up, sunglasses on. She walked up the steps and paused when she saw the bags. Her body stiffened. She read the note, and I watched her lips move as she did. Then she crumpled it in her fist. For a second, I thought she might knock. Demand answers. Try to explain. But she didn't. She gathered the bags. Slowly, carefully. Her hands shook. And then she sat on the steps, our steps, and cried. But I didn't get out of the car. I didn't comfort her. I just watched the final scene of the story we used to call a marriage. And in that moment, I realized something. There was nothing left to save. The silence after impact is what stays with you. When a car crashes, they say the moment after the screech and the crunch is the loudest kind of quiet. That's exactly what those next few days felt like. A stillness that screamed. An emptiness that echoed. After I saw her at the motel, after I watched her gather her bags from our front steps with trembling hands, I didn't go back inside right away. I stayed in the car, hidden under the overhanging branches by our neighbor's house. I watched her crumble in real time and I felt nothing. Not relief, not rage, just blankness. She sat on the edge of the steps, the note still clenched in one hand, her shoulders shaking as she sobbed into the morning. But I didn't move. I didn't call out to her. I didn't walk up and ask her why. That part of me, the man who would have fought for her, demanded answers, begged for honesty. That version of me didn't exist anymore. She cried alone, and I watched quietly from a distance, like a stranger. When she finally stood up, she didn't knock. She didn't text. She loaded her bags into the back of her car and drove off. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes, but it felt like the funeral of everything we'd built. That evening, I stepped back inside the house. And that's when the real weight hit me. I had removed her physical presence, yes, but her fingerprints were everywhere. Her scarf was still draped over the back of the dining chair. A pair of her running shoes sat by the door. Her scent lingered in the hallway. In the bathroom, I found her hairbrush still tucked next to mine, and 3 of her earrings scattered on the vanity like abandoned punctuation marks to a sentence I didn't want to finish. It felt surgical, the way I began separating my life from hers. I emptied drawers. I changed pillowcases. I tossed out the toothbrush we used to share on weekend trips. I deleted the playlist we'd made together, the one labeled for us, that now felt like a cruel joke. I canceled the anniversary dinner reservation, one I had booked 2 months in advance at her favorite place. She didn't know. She was never supposed to know. By the second day, it felt like I was living in a crime scene. Everything had meaning now. Every photo on the wall felt staged. Every object a prop. I started to wonder if our entire marriage had just been a performance that ran too long. And then, like a final twist in some morbid game, she called. I let it ring twice before answering. Hello. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing. It's me, she finally said. Her voice was small, controlled. I think we should talk. Talk. That one word pissed me off more than anything she could have said. She wanted to talk now? After lies and secrets and motel rooms? But I didn't hang up. Some pathetic, masochistic part of me needed to see it through. All right, I said. Come over. We'll talk. She showed up just before sunset. No makeup, hoodie and jeans, hair tied back. She looked like she hadn't slept, which honestly made two of us. I met her at the door but didn't invite her in. We stood in the entryway, awkward and cold, like co-workers forced to debrief after a failed project. I didn't expect you to actually pick up, she said. I shrugged. Neither did I. She glanced around the house, noticing what I'd already begged *N to change. You've been busy. I wanted you out. A pause. I got the message, she said quietly. Another pause. Then, do you still want to hear the truth? That question stopped me, because as much as I hated her in that moment, as much as I wanted to scream or slam the door in her face, a part of me, deep buried, still needed to know. I needed to hear it out loud, to confirm that I hadn't imagined it all. So I stepped aside and let her in. She walked straight to the kitchen, like muscle memory took over. She reached for the stool at the counter, her stool, and paused, then sat. I leaned against the opposite counter, arms crossed, trying not to flinch at the familiarity of it all. How long? I asked without preamble. She didn't pretend not to know what I meant. 6 months, she said. I nodded slowly. Mike. Her eyes shifted. No. His name's Nathan. Nathan. I said it once in my head. Then again. Nathan. The name landed like a brick in my stomach. Because I knew him. Everyone did. Nathan had been at our wedding. We had beers together on the back patio while he told me how lucky I was. He gave a toast that night, raising his glass to Jessica and me and to the kind of love that makes the rest of us jealous. That Nathan. Of course it was him. You were with him at the motel, I said. She nodded. Yes. That simple, brutal honesty knocked the air from my lungs. No denial. No excuses. Just confirmation. He's married, I said. Not anymore. Of course not. I wanted to ask a million things. Why him? When did it start? What did he offer you that I didn't? But the questions all tasted like poison in my throat. So instead I said, were you ever going to tell me? Her eyes dropped to the floor. Eventually. I had a plan. I wasn't going to do it like this. I let out a bitter laugh. Right? You had a plan. I even talked to a lawyer, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to blindside you. I was just waiting for the right moment. You were waiting for the right moment to destroy me. No, she said, looking up finally. Her eyes were red. I was waiting for the right moment to end something that was already dead. That line hit me harder than anything she'd said all night. She continued, her voice shaking now. I didn't want to keep pretending. I was tired of faking my way through dinners and hugs and I love yous. I know I should have left earlier. I know I should have had the guts to say something. But I didn't. And then it was too late. I stood there, arms folded so tightly my fingers went numb. It's not just about Nathan, she said. It's about me. About feeling invisible. About waking up every day and wondering who I'd become. And yeah, he made me feel alive again. But that's not your fault. It's mine. I let us rot. For a moment, the kitchen felt too small. The air too thick. Her words bounced around like shrapnel. I wanted to yell. I wanted to cry. I wanted to rewind time. Instead, I looked her in the eye and said, was it ever real for you? She didn't answer. That was answer enough. When she left, it wasn't with bags or shouting or final ultimatums. It was just her walking quietly out the door. No hugs. No tears. Just silence. I watched her go without saying goodbye. And the worst part? She didn't say it either. Because she already had. Long before that night. A week passed. 7 days since she walked out of our house without looking back. 7 days of waking up to silence, of pacing through a home that suddenly felt too symmetrical, too quiet, too curated. Like a model house that no one really lived in. I expected the pain. What I didn't expect was the hollow. You'd think after everything, after the betrayal, after the motel, after Nathan, the guy who toasted us at our wedding, that I'd be livid, that I'd want to smash dishes, punch a wall, scream into the void. But no, all I felt was nothing. Like she had scooped out the insides of my chest and left a polite thank you note in the space where my heart used to be. I tried keeping busy. Work, dishes, walks around the block, laundry I didn't need to do. I alphabetized our spice rack one night just to avoid checking my phone. I didn't expect her to reach out, and she didn't, but someone else did. Nathan. 3 days after she left, I got a message from him. Mark, I don't know what Jessica told you. I didn't want this to go down like it did. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. It was the most insulting kind of apology, hollow, self-serving, dressed up in false humility. He wanted me to reach out, to talk, to what? Compare notes, share memories, maybe have a laugh over how well he blended into my life while he was quietly dismantling it behind my back. I didn't respond, but that message burned like acid in my brain. The next time I saw Jessica was at a coffee shop. Accidental, not planned. I'd been working from a corner table trying to salvage my focus when she walked in with a different kind of energy. Confident, put together. She was wearing the green jacket I bought her last Christmas. Her hair was curled the way she used to do it for date nights. She looked good, and that pissed me off more than anything. She didn't see me at first, but when she turned from the counter with a drink in hand and locked eyes with me, something in her face froze. She came over slowly, cautious, like she was afraid I'd explode in public. Hey, she said, voice soft, like she was talking to someone grieving. Maybe she thought I was. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Yeah, me neither. She looked down at her drink. I didn't think I'd run into you this soon. You're still in town? She hesitated. Temporarily. Staying at a friend's. I didn't ask who. I already knew. We stood there in that weird half-circle of polite awkwardness. Two people who used to share everything, now unable to figure out where to put their hands. And then, as if compelled by guilt or some twisted sense of closure, she pulled something out of her purse. A folded letter. Paper, not digital. Handwritten. I was going to send this, she said. But, you're here. I took it slowly. What is it? A letter, she said. To Nathan. That caught me off guard. You wrote him a letter? She nodded. I wrote it the day after I left. I haven't sent it. I don't think I will. I opened it. The handwriting was familiar, slanted, confident. Hers. I won't quote the whole thing, but it started like this. Nathan, I can't keep pretending this is something it's not. I thought I wanted to leave Mark for you. I thought you were my escape hatch. But now, I'm not so sure I even know who I am without the chaos of lying to both of you. She confessed to feeling trapped, not by me but by herself, by the fantasy of a new life, a fresh start, one she thought Nathan represented. She wrote about how being with him felt like freedom at first, but quickly started to feel like a second prison, a faster burning one. And then she wrote this. I left Mark long before I physically walked out of that house. I know that now. I stopped being his wife months ago. I was just waiting to make it official. That makes me a coward, not a victim. Don't romanticize this. I stared at those words for a long time. She wasn't saying it to me, but somehow, it cut deeper than anything she'd said before. When I looked back up, she was still standing there. I didn't bring it to win points, she said. I just thought. You deserve to know the truth. The truth? I echoed, almost laughing. Then I folded the letter and handed it back to her. Keep it, I said. You might need the reminder. She flinched just slightly, then nodded. Fair. And with that, she turned and walked out, No lingering looks. No last words. Just the bell above the door jingling as she disappeared into the daylight. That night, I sat with her letter spread out on the table. The cat sat curled next to me, purring softly. The only living being in the house who hadn't lied to me. I reread the lines over and over again, dissecting every word, looking for hidden meanings, secret regrets. But everything was out in the open now. She had been planning her exit for months, talked to a lawyer, found an apartment, checked out mentally long before she checked out physically. All those dinners we still shared in the final weeks, the occasional goodnight kiss, the I love you she still tossed over her shoulder like breadcrumbs. They weren't real. They were placeholders. Lines from a script she no longer believed in. I wasn't her husband. I was her cover story. And that knowledge, that realization, dropped on me like a hammer. Because even though I had found the truth, the way it unfolded wasn't satisfying. There was no confrontation with Nathan. No cinematic yelling match. No catharsis. Just a letter she never sent. And a marriage that never truly existed in its final form. I kept wondering when exactly the shift had happened. When she stopped loving me. Was it after a fight? After a business trip? Was there a moment? A single night where she looked at me and decided she was done? I'll never know. But the scariest part? She probably doesn't either. Later that week, my friend Devin invited me out for drinks. I hadn't told many people what had happened. Just the basics. Devin knew enough to avoid the details. We sat at a bar we used to frequent before life got too busy. He raised a glass to me. To clarity, he said. I gave a tired smile. To starting over. We didn't talk about her. We talked about old memories. About stupid things we used to do in college. For a few hours I felt human again. Not broken. Just bruised. When I got home that night, the house felt a little less haunted. I fed the cat. Washed a dish, watched a show I used to love, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized something. The story wasn't over, but her chapter was. Her letter and confession made it clear. Our marriage had been hollow long before I noticed. She'd already found an apartment, met with a lawyer, and planned her exit like a strategy, not a breakup. Every I love you, every shared dinner. It was just theater. I hadn't lost her to Nathan. I'd lost her to indifference, long ago. The motel wasn't the betrayal. It was the conclusion. I moved to a small place outside the city with our cat. Adopted another. Started going to a book club where people talked about healing, not heartbreak. For the first time, I shared my story out loud. That's where I met Hannah. She spilled coffee on my shoes and laughed like she meant it. It wasn't love yet, but it was real. And in that moment, I realized I hadn't been destroyed. I had survived. And I was still building something worth living for.